Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another live stream here on the Here to Record YouTube channel. Nice to have you here. I've once again, as this thing goes, moved things around, changed a lot of settings. So let me know if you can see me just fine. If not, we can adjust things along the way. Plenty of stuff to talk about on today's show, and it's going to be a little bit different from my previous live streams, where I would do 30 minutes of show and 30 minutes of post show for members only. Instead, today it's going to be a full 60 minutes if we have enough to talk about in that amount of time. And then we hung out a little bit before the show and a little bit after the show, and that's for members only over on Zoom. So you can always join the link to that. You'll find it in Discord. If you're a member, you'll find the right channels. So that's the show today. 60 minutes of general chit chat, but I'm not going to do it alone today. I actually have a helper here with me, and if I press all the buttons right, maybe you'll also see and hear that helper. I have Jonas here with me as well. Welcome, Jonas. Nice to have you.
It's, I was just thinking about it. It's quite amazing that this time I actually got like more than 5 minutes of prep time, and we didn't decide to, hey, you're doing the back end, let's bring you in front. So it's great to be here.
What a pleasure to actually have time to set things up and be
Yeah.
ready for the show, right?
Yeah, it's quite nice. We were hanging out with your members in the Zoom, and now we are suddenly live.
Here we are.
The wonders of
And
the internet.
people can tell me if our volumes are pretty similar. I am tracking them here, but as it is, there's too many buttons to press, and you can let me know if there's any issues along the way. I'm happy to make those tweaks. Now, what's weird though, Jonas, is you and I over the last like 2 years basically have talked on Discord most days. We have weekly calls because we're both developing stuff similar to each other, so we have a lot to chat about. But what's strange is that we've never actually been on this channel together on a live stream. Isn't that weird after all this time?
Well, I think we've talked about it quite a many times, like how amazing would it be like to do a podcast or something, all that. So, yeah, I think it's weird because I always kind of considered like us talking, it was always a nice atmosphere. So, looking forward to continuing it here.
Yeah, here we are doing it. And I'm pressing all the buttons for once. That's another thing. Usually, whenever Jonas and I work together in some sense, he is working behind the scenes on like a panel show that I decided to put together, and he's doing all the vmix stuff and pressing all the buttons most of the time. But today, for some reason, I decided to press all the buttons, and let's see how far it gets us. The idea of this show, though, is just to hang out, talk about a few different bits and pieces. We don't have any major releases or anything today. Just we want to test things out, and I was interested to have a co-host on the channel, so it's nice to have one willing to help me out. But before we dig in too far into chit chat, nice to see a lot of familiar faces here. Alex, nice to have you here finally. I'm home in time for one of your live streams. Yeah, nice to have you here on the live stream watching along. Plenty of other people a couple from Ireland, which is nice. I was just there last week, not too far from Waterford, I think, if my geography is correct. And Guy's here as well. Nice to have you here too, Guy, from the DVE store. People can hear and see us just fine, which is good. David wants to know, what in-ear monitoring are you using? My choice is just slightly more subtle than yours, Jonas. I have these, actually it was recommended by Alex, these ME, I always forget what it's called, MEE2, MEE5.
The ME audio ones.
That's it, ME audio 2s maybe, which I quite like. They're a little bit subtle unless you really turn to the side. And what have you chosen for us today, Jonas?
Normally I wear these huge headsets because we do critically listening, but it's really weird. I really like these JBLs, and they're not at all accurate or anything. They're like bass boosted. I love them for like jamming out to some coding music and get some coding hours in. And I realized if I sometimes like just listen to them, my ears can enjoy the fullness and resolution of my monitoring speakers.
Okay, that's good. That's really good. So I approve of the choice. It's better than the over the ears, I think, just for this one. That seems a little too plugged in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the in ears just for this purpose. What else? People are saying lots of nice things about Alex, which is good to see in the chat. Everyone complimenting his excellent videos. And you just posted one a little while ago. I haven't actually had a chance to watch that yet. Ian saying you can afford to go louder. I bumped my volume up to hear you better. I'll just leave it where it is, just in general, as long as we're kind of equal right now then. Unless you mean me specifically. I can make that change. And Guy wants to know, physically, where is Jonas and where is John? I am based in southern Sweden, and I've set up a little studio in the local town. How about you, Jonas?
Well, I'm also in the southern, but from Germany, so it's like really interesting because you're south, that's not for me. So it's kind of doesn't work out, but also kind of works out. We're both south of our countries.
Kind of works out ish.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where we're at. So we're pretty far away from one another, and I guess we haven't actually met each other to this point, even though we chat all the time as well.
It feels so weird that like we haven't even met each other in real life, but we've chatted for so long. That's one of the things I really look forward for IBC this year, is to finally meet each other. We wanted to do it last year, and then it got cancelled. And looking forward to it not being cancelled this year.
Exactly. Well, I think we can dig into that now. Actually, let's talk a little bit about IBC in general, since it came up. So, if anyone is not necessarily familiar with it, it was a yearly trade show happening in Amsterdam. until pandemic times, and then cancelled, moved, all the usual stuff. But this year, it seems like it's set to go, right? September, is it 12th or around then?
It's the 9th to the 12th. It's quite a long show, actually, over a weekend. So I'm really interested in to see how that is. The last trade show I was on was in Hamburg, one of the more regionalized German ones. Really interested in how IBC is gonna get. And just today, it seems like there's some window that started today, because I'm starting to get flooded with, come join us in our stand, let's talk, emails. I don't know if you got all those yet.
Just today, I got a bunch.
So I feel like I definitely feel it getting closer and closer.
Yeah, me too. Me too. The countdown is on, which is really nice, and I'm excited for it. I've never actually been. I always intended to go, but it was not something I ever had the chance to visit previous. So now I'm excited. See what happens. Originally, my intention was to go there and not commit to anything. I was just going to go and walk around, meet people like Jonas, and maybe film just like the slightest little BTS so I could make a video when I got back. That was my original intention. And, things just snowball. And then over on the Office Hours community, they're doing I'm going to put my name in there too. We're going to do a live show from the show floor. That, even though I'm involved in it, that's about as much as I know right at this very second. Maybe, Jonas, you can tell me a bit more about what I've got myself in for and what people can watch when the time comes.
Yeah, so right now we're planning a live coverage, interactive coverage from IBC. There will be an update on Office Hours about that soonish. But we'll have a couple of hosts there that get to talk to some of the vendors, and we really want to show you how it is to come to Amsterdam, not only enjoy IBC, but also see what's up in Amsterdam. So I think it's going to be great. As we're still developing it, I don't know myself fully yet what we got ourselves into, but I'm sure it's going to be fun.
Yeah, we can see what happens. But what we know at least is that we'll do a live stream from the show floor if technology is on our side, with a mixture of live content and pre-recorded content.
I think when I looked at the cell maps was like, yeah, but then also there's not that many people that have nothing better to do as to walk through Ray and get the cell maps updated. So I'm really hoping that the cell maps aren't accurate, because otherwise that might be a job for 100 feet Ethernet cable.
Okay, yeah, we're going to be tethered then. Yeah. Okay, we can look forward to that.
We'll see.
We'll see how that goes. And here Eric's saying MailChimp is unleashing the torrent of IBC. Yeah, I accidentally signed up for IBC 365 last year, and I didn't think what that actually stood for, the 365. I just thought it meant that they, they're always interested all year round, is what I thought that meant. But 365 literally meant an email every single day about IBC for 365 days. So I canceled that within, much less than 365 days. It's too much information. I didn't need to know. Way too much.
I think what I started doing is, I don't know if you went to the floor mapper yet, but it's really cool. You can choose from all vendors. You can choose the ones that you're interested in. And then it basically generates a little route for you. So you can say, I want to go to this hall and I want to visit these 5 vendors and have a conversation with them. And you can add all your dates that you have set up with vendors in there as well. So you have a nice itinerary of where you want to go, because from Google Maps, I've never been to Ray, but it looks huge, so I think there's going to be a lot of walking involved as well.
I think so too. I've only been outside of it, and I've seen the scale. I stayed in a hotel across the street from it once, and I saw the scale of the building. In fact, at the time they were setting up for IEC, which was in the area at the time, or in the venue at the time. So I've only sort of walked around the building and seen how big it is. We'll see how many steps we can manage to accumulate over those few days. Maybe a lot on the first day and then not so many on the next few days. That's what I'm thinking anyway. We'll see. Let me see what else. Chuck here saying, hey, good to see you both. Nice to have you here. And another camera channel celebrates 9 months of membership. Hello, Jonas, and hello, John. Thank you for that little message for us on your 9-month anniversary of being a channel member. Nice to have you here. It's a shame you missed out the pre-show, but you can always join for the after show as well. Do we have anything else on IBC, or is that, we'll see how it goes when the time comes?
I think it's still a bit out.
Hmm.
We have a little countdown counting down, and looks like it's 38 days, 15 hours, and 18 minutes out till the IBC show floor opens. So we'll see more then. I'm really looking forward to meeting all the people that we met through office hours and through your channel during the pandemic and never actually met in real life. So I think that's gonna be real exciting.
Me too. I've actually just posted a poll on the channel here. Are you going to IBC this year? Yes or no are your two options. So interested to hear what people, if people are going to. I probably should have said like thinking of it as an option as well. But yeah.
No, people have to decide right now, and if they say no, we're gonna send the list to IBC.
That is your
and you
chance
can't
to
sign
go.
up anymore.
So that'll be fun, I think. Mostly I am excited just to walk around and meet some people. And we will do here to record meetup of some sort, I'm sure, at the show. Maybe not on the show floor, but maybe at some point during the time. So if you're not in the Discord already, join that. That's where you can get the details on that when the time comes. It'll probably be organized last minute, somewhere easy to get to. We'll see what happens, just for like a little chat. In fact, my plan is to bring loads of stickers and coasters. Here's a dirty one that I actually use, of like official Here to Record merchandise. I don't send it out to anybody because I realized how much of a hassle it is to send postage from Sweden here. And I also might bring one of these to give away to someone who's lucky. This is an official, only 3 of its kind, Here to Record mouse mat. So if that doesn't entice you to
Quite
go
a shiny
to...
one.
What's that?
That's quite the shiny mouse pad.
Was it? Did it catch the light there nicely? It's
Yeah.
not. It's very matte in real life here, so that would be a reason to say yes if you can recast your vote there. Although so far it's not looking good. We have 80% of people are not going, so I mean it might be a quiet meetup.
Well, that just means we have 80% of the people in chat right now who can watch us live and ask their questions, so we can be their proxy for IVC and get that. I think now talking about the mousepad, what's gonna be interesting is like how much swag we gonna finesse ourselves into. Like, really want one of those VMix mouse pads, and
Yeah.
what I've heard are really good, and I got from the last convention are like the Ross socks and the Ross sunglasses.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have a
those
VMix
are great.
mousepad here from years ago. Someone else got it at IBC, but I don't know where it went. But I know the camera channel says cool mousepad. Yes, I love it. Totally worth. The problem with actually selling these things is like it doesn't make any sense, and to send them to people for free doesn't make any sense. So IBC and things like that will be the way to do it. Otherwise, we'll see what happens on IBC, and we'll give you more details as the time comes in. Let's shift gears slightly. Alex wants to know, how are you bringing Jonas in today? Now, this is not the most high-tech solution for the show today. Because we had a pre-show members-only hangout Zoom call, there's a long name, I figured since I'm already using that for Zoom, then we could just continue to use that for Zoom throughout the show. So I have that Zoom call opened, and then on a second window within the Zoom call, we have Jonas full screen, who is pinned there, and I've also given him co-host permissions because there's other people in the Zoom call right now. We have a few members hanging out in there, yeah, pumping it up there. Good to see you all there. So they're there, but they're not allowed to unmute themselves just for the course of the show. I mostly trust them, mostly, not to say anything terrible. But we're using the same call for that purpose, which is working out really nicely, I think. I did accidentally not use my 1080p account, which Guy was kind enough to let me use for shows and stuff like this. For some reason, I opted to go for my 720p account for no good reason other than stupidity.
I think the only reason why you did that is so if we do a 2-up, I look worse. I think that's the sole purpose why you did that.
I have no comment on the reason. That's a very good choice. Yeah, well, let's just keep it that way then. We'll keep it with 720p. I can look extra good. I'm going to start streaming in 4K, and you're going to look even worse. So that's how we're bringing this in.
It's just reminiscent of you when we tried to do stuff out of your tiny house, and I know that 720p already was pushing it hard.
It was. Just today I was there I was doing some development work, and I just had to update like a little module, and it took like 5 minutes waiting for it to do its thing. It was painful. Coming here takes seconds. So the difference is is enormous. I love being here. And a pin zoom 720p looks good to me. So you look good enough, Jonas. Eric seems to think.
That's good.
Nice. Let's see, what else? Are you guys using the ATEM streaming bridge? No, we're not for this. The Larry Signer show wants to know. I'm not a huge fan myself of using, if I am on the show and also, if I'm hosting or talking on the show and also running the show, I'm not a huge fan of using a different signal path to bring people in, because what I find it ends up doing is confusing me, because I can hear them in my headphones. That in this case I could hear Jonas on my headphones, but I don't know that you can't hear him until it's too late and I accidentally made a mistake or something silly like that. So what I would prefer to do is lose a little bit of the back and forth, even though Zoom is pretty good for that. But I'd prefer to just lose a little bit of quality as well. And what I get in return is knowing that whenever I can hear Jonas in my headphones, you can hear Jonas on the stream as well. I think it's a pretty good trade-off whenever you're running the show yourself. But obviously, if in the future we'll try a few other different ways. I mean, Jonas, you've got quite a few pieces of equipment sitting in your room there, and I have a few too, but we could use for contribution methods. Do you have any that you could quickly give us a look at?
Well, I think starting off bumping my microphone awkwardly, we both have Pearl Nanos that we could easily use. We would stream to a gateway, do SDI. The cool thing is they both have an HDMI out, so I could send you my feed and you could send me your feed, and we could just listen either through the headphone output or directly on the HDMI. So we could get a really high quality feed that way. Then I also just today got the Ultra Encode from Magewell. Looks quite interesting, which would be another SRT option. And then there's a bunch of cool new SRT tools that I'm looking at. One of them is Rivet App from LiveX, which is similar to Zoom, kinda. It's like a lot of people know Larry's Broadcaster from their phone. It's kinda that, but for a PC. It's might be cool to use that someday.
Yeah, I looked into that a little bit when it came out. I thought it was a really nice, slick interface for easy to understand for both sides, the contributor and the administrator, or whatever the word is for us on this side. What just to backtrack there, what was that Magewell, and tell me just a little bit more about that. What's going on there?
So it's the Ultra Encode SDI, and the reason I bought it is I was browsing through some SRT encoders, and this is like $500 to $600. But the cool thing is it not only has Ethernet and a Wi-Fi antenna that you can either use for it to generate an AP or for it to also like latch onto something. But the cool thing is also it has this option USB slot up here, and that one actually works for a modem. So it's a really versatile small encoder that also happens to run on 5 volts. So as we were talking about the IBC, power management probably also gonna be an issue when we walk around the show floor. So I thought maybe I'll try this encoder, because all my other encoders need way more power, and because they do way more things, and this is just a simple encoder, only needs 5 volts, so like typical power bank might be enough, and might make quite a handy encoder.
Yeah, I think so. What is your general, like, I just bought a new encoder, let me just see if it's any good. What would be your first few steps to do that?
Often it's like just looking at what settings it gives me. Like one of the settings that I want for a contribution encoder is like constant bitrate ideally, because everyone that streamed with an ATEM probably has seen the message on YouTube telling you that something is wrong with your stream and you're being irritated because the ATEM is like, everything is fine. That's probably because it has variable bitrate. So it's like, hey, there's a still image. Even if we do the 2 up, you will probably would see a little bit of a drop. Mm-hmm. So that can cause some issues just because it wobbles around and causes the network not to be always the same. So that's what I look in, and then I look like, does it do H.264? Does it do H.265? And then I just pipe it mostly into my camera for a first look at it locally in vMix, and then I have a little test pattern generator up here that can generate some test patterns, and I just let it run till it dies, or use one of Aaron Paraki's test clips, or some waves. Waves are also really nice to see how hard an code can break up.
That's good. I should probably employ some of that stuff myself whenever I grab a few pieces. I think what I really want to do is set up like a little bench that's just much easier to, you get it, plug it in, press play, like you said, run it until it dies, and then analyze from there. It's just not a workflow I've got into just yet, but it would be quite nice to set that up and really, what I want to do is do that, but then I want to share that information usefully as part of like a video on the device, which I find hard to really quantify up until this point.
I think it might be, what might be cool is like we put together like a typical common video that's pretty hard to encode, and what you then can do is we produce it in ProRes. In ProRes, something that has not that much compression. And what you then can do is you record what the encoder sends you again, and then you line up two timecodes and overlay it and do a difference key. That way you see all the micro-plugging, all the encode stuff that wasn't like it was before. And then you could like, so you basically get a black and white image of what did change. And then you could count how much black you have. So you can get like a qualitative number. But you could also like, I know that you're a website developer, and I think we could figure something out where like we show the nice footage first, and then you can select a couple encoders and just watch like the different, how does this footage look like after we got it encoded.
That's exactly what I would like to do. And then over time, every time you get something new and you run it through the same tests and add it to that list. What I would want to make sure though is like between, let's say a few months pass between those two things, what's the best way to make sure like your network hasn't changed much since then, or nothing else is going to affect this test?
Well, I probably would do the test like on local area network, as we would just look like at the encode performance. Like even just like a direct SDI cable and doing static IP addresses probably would work, just to like get that out of the testing pattern. Then a great idea that I just read is like do a video that progressively gets harder to encode. Like we start with a static image, then it's like flashing image, then you add waves, some confetti, and make it harder and harder to encode. So you can also see it progressively getting worse, and you can then say like, at minute 3, this one really didn't like it anymore. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Maybe we can try to get some of that stuff set up and test in general, because I'm really interested in digging deeper into that level of how well does this one compare to that one based on much better tests. Then does it work, yes or no?
And I think like a big part of that is just being open about the data. Like we could like develop the H2R graphics, Jonas index of an code, but like that would be really weird. But like also publishing the recordings and being like, hey, you can compare yourself. Is this encoder like worth the other $500 that it costs? I think that might be quite cool.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And here's Eric back again. Definitely benchmarking video audio gear is useful, but not simple or easy. That's for sure. But Jonas has a good idea on how to start. I think starting somewhere and having something is more than what we currently have, which is marketing pages, basically. I feel like that's the only resource for a lot of these pieces of equipment, like the Amazon listing. Does it work or not? Doesn't really tell you much. Question just came in here. Stanley wants to know, what is your take on the current quality of PTZ cameras? Any recommendations? For me, I've never actually purchased any, so I've never felt that sting of spending, because they're usually pretty expensive, relatively speaking to what I would need things for. I've never felt that sting of buying one and being happy or unhappy with it. And I think PTZs are one of those things that really adds up when you want to buy, because you never want to buy one, you want to buy 3 probably, and a controller. All I can say that anyone I've talked to before that's bought one, when they buy the cheaper ones, they're always unhappy, or the less expensive ones, they're always unhappy. By the 6-month mark, they start to compare it to what they could have bought, which gets painful. Any thoughts on that, Jonas?
Well, I know that a lot of people that are happy have the UE 150. That is crazy expensive. So like, you can go from it from like a couple perspectives. One of the things that I've been working on doing is like using a Ronin RS2 to get the really nice smooth motion, and then use the APC from middle control. And then you can put like a BGH1, like the one that I have on there, and have like a really, really nice camera, because like what you mostly, it is a trade-off between quality of motion, like the pan tilting, and the quality of the picture. One that I do really like is up here is the CRN 300 from Canon. It's not amazing, but it's a really solid, good choice that I would feel comfortable using in a production. I also have a little one back here, probably the biggest scam that I ever bought, because Panasonic calls it a PTZ for like. And yeah, I didn't read the full description. I was like, great, I need a PTZ to test some code integration for, just to see like, does it respond back? Because their protocol is a little weirdly documented. Well, turns out this one does not have a motor to turn it. There's like a screw. You can unscrew it and then physically twist it to turn it. So I was like, I guess you can call that a pan tilt zoom camera, and has a 4K sensor and does like crop ins and all that. But I was a little disappointed.
That's funny. So there's no motor on it at all, not for pan.
Well, let me see if I can grab it real quick.
Okay, yeah. That's funny. That seems like a real, someone's lied, or someone's stretched the truth a little bit. More of a manual PTZ.
Yeah, like
Okay,
it's a
hold on, let me
really
just full
cute
screen you here.
camera.
There you go.
It's a really cute camera. So I was like, it kind of looks cute. But then there's these screws on top and here at the bottom, and I just unscrewed them, and then you can manually move it. And like I stared at it for so long because I was totally believing that I'm doing something wrong and it's just gonna start moving. The cool thing also is it is has an HDMI out and a USB-C out, so you can use it like as a webcam and then do like that. But yeah, I was a little disappointed.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Was that what was the other port on it though? Was that like PoE or what was that?
Sadly, not PoE. No, it was just a LAN interface to control it. Because that's a cool thing. They speak a pretty similar protocol to the UE150, so I can run some tests on it without actually needing to own a UE150.
That's true.
Just to sit here and run tests against.
That's true. But I love the thought of just, having a person sitting there slowly moving it. Because actually that goes to what Doug in the chat here just said. I find that PTZs don't usually reduce the size of the crew, so it's often better to just put an operator on a regular camera, or you could have an operator on one of these little manual PTZ cameras. That's so funny. Such a lie, I think.
Yeah, I don't think PTZs often, like, they don't I've never really seen them decrease the size of crew and still keeping the same quality. It's like still you need a really good PT setup, and then you can do a really great show. And often they're like also used for COVID safety. Like we can put an operator far away, like for one of the projects that we've done. We literally control PT sets that are not on Ireland from all over the world. That's kind of like hard to do physically. That would be a really long stick that you need to have to poke the camera. And also like putting them high up without needing to have all the safety for the operator.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, that's cool. And David here with enjoying two Canon CRN 300 PTZs. Those are quite nice. I've heard good things about those. If I'm not mistaken, the actual camera part is basically the same as I've forgotten now, but I believe that the actual camera part of it is very similar optics to some other Canon cameras in the range, and it's just been adapted to be PTZ instead, which is quite neat.
I mean, I would love for Panasonic to release like the BGH1 in a form factor, but then like also there's just PTZ heads that do that way better, because then you can also decide to upgrade your camera apart from your movement of pan tilt.
I always think though that those PTZ heads are just carry such a big footprint whenever you want to compared to like the built camera plus PTZ. It always seems much more streamlined and subtle than a PTZ head with a camera attached.
There's some from that video that are pretty compact. I mean, obviously the RS2 is pretty out there, but yeah, I found it works quite well.
Yeah. And we have Go Web Technologies here waiting for the Bird Dog P120s. Is that, I guess maybe you bought them and they're not there yet, which would be a shame. And Ryland, good to have you here as well. Canon N300s are 2,600. Yeah, I guess that's US dollars. I'm going to guess here. I just don't see many scenarios that this is a good investment. Yeah, that's the second conversation I have with most people that I know that bought PTZs is it's a running tally in their heads before it's paid back.
Yeah.
And depending on how much work you're doing and how much you're charging, it might be a while before you get that done. And like Doug says, maybe it doesn't stop you from having somebody. You really want to know that you're going to make a good investment. Although I will say, for me, whenever I'm doing jobs for people and they give me the option between 2 cameras, manual, and I'm sitting at the ATEM, this is a typical job for me. I'm using their equipment, I'm sitting in an ATEM, and one of my hands is off to the side controlling a camera, and the other one's a wide camera. What I would much prefer in that case is the ATEM plus a PTZ controller any day, because getting in that position where you've got one arm up or maybe you're standing all day, it's not so fun, I find, over the course of like a 3-day event. So I'd much rather use the PTZs if they have them.
There's also this really interesting trend of cameras adding SRT and 3D to the cameras, because interesting use case for PTZs also is like for virtual production, because they already know where they are. There's this protocol called 3D that you can use to then transfer them into an engine like Unreal Engine and track them in there. So the Canon CRN 300 that I have up there, it keeps getting pushed back, but it's gonna get an SRT and 3D upgrade, and all the Bird Dog ones already got that. So it's really interesting to see the cameras all embrace SRT and 3D, because it's gonna be really interesting to like either be able to just stream all your cameras to the cloud without even having a switcher locally, or to have 3D and then put them into Unreal Engine, and then you suddenly can map out all the backgrounds for people and do a really interesting virtual production with movement.
I'm excited for that, especially the first one you mentioned, like putting all your cameras to the cloud and then letting someone else take control. But I always worry, most of the time whenever I go to places, they can barely manage to push out one stream, never mind simultaneous streams. So that would be a constant consideration for me.
From my experience, it keeps getting better, and like often what we then bring is like a little LTE antenna, and we not only rely on venue internet. Obviously you need like, the one downside that you don't have is like you can't do a local record and still cut it and then tell the client, oh yeah, we lost internet, but we'll upload the recording. So that point is there, but we also employ like out of bound technology where we just say we also have a secondary internet that we can remote into, and like the fly pack behind me still has a ATEM in it, so you could cut the show remotely on like a small res multi-viewer.
Let's talk about ATEMs in general. So since I was last live, and since we were last live, I guess, because that was never, Blackmagic came out with some ATEM SDI. ATEM Mini SDI is what I'm going to call it just for a second, because that is a better name that sums up what it is. I was just thinking about this yesterday. The ATEM, if you think about the base model, the ATEM SDI that they just came out with, it was a really strange name, because many of their ATEMs are ATEM SDIs. So removing the mini part of it was an interesting choice. But basically they came out with 3 new ATEM minis, which have SDI connectors. A replacement for the original ATEM mini with SDI, a replacement for the ATEM Mini Pro ISO, and then the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. And based on those names, though, I can see why they changed it to ATEM SDI, because it's getting pretty long.
I mean, at some point, the resellers are just gonna tell them that, sorry guys, like we can't put your full name into the product description anymore, because there's gonna hit some limit somewhere.
There is. They're gonna run out of space on the ATEM to actually write the product name of the ATEM.
It's also really interesting, like, are they gonna drop the ATEM brand from the constellations? Like, is it just gonna be a Constellation 2ME HD? Because like, otherwise it's really odd to say ATEM SDI.
It is.
Like all ATEMs that don't have mini in them mostly have been SDI.
Exactly. That's why it's a weird category name. ATEM SDI. Oh, do you mean the ATEM SDI or your your
I
SDI
think maybe we'll
ATEM.
just start a revolution and just call them ATEM Mini SDI so long till like Magic Cell Swap get confused themselves and just call it that again. That might be a choice, but yeah, it's really odd naming, and I don't think it helps the consumer like trying to figure out what do you need.
I was thinking though, if they were going to put like a 4K at the end of the name, for example, in the future, then ATEM Mini SDI Pro ISO 4K. We're getting pretty ridiculous at that point. But I have my ATEM SDI Pro ISO. I actually had to look at the name there before I said it because it confuses me.
Yeah.
And I made a few videos about it already on the channel here. If you haven't watched those, then don't do it now. Watch them later because you're here now with us. But I was really excited about the device in general, and I think it is a good device. But in many ways, I misspoke earlier because it's not a replacement for the ATEM Mini Pro ISO, not at all. It's more of a sidestep. So it's the SDI version of that, because it's no different than that, except for some tiny changes. One being that there's two SDI outputs now instead of one HDMI. A few things have been removed. I just realized that there's no camera 1 direct anymore. That's not an option now. In the older ATEM Mini models, you could plug in one camera into input 1 and then directly send that out of the output. That way you could game with the ATEM and not lose anything along the way. But they've just removed that from this this product line. Maybe they'll add it, but I doubt it. And
I think it has something to do with the HDMI chips, just from like the first HDMI chip always was different because it was like doing a more strict path through. SDI doesn't have that specialty chip, so it probably makes sense that they don't have an SDI direct.
Yeah, me too. I agree. And you can't exactly plug a PlayStation into this thing without some effort going through some sort of converter and then passing that back into a monitor. So it makes sense not to have that feature here. And in general, if you look at the marketing pages, all my screens are in action right now, so I can't actually show you them, but you'll see that they don't really try to sell this to gamers just like they did with the ATEM Mini.
Yeah.
So it is a different market. But overall, it is the exact same thing, but with SDI ports on the back instead of HDMI, which I guess my initial feeling of, oh, cool, new stuff, disappeared whenever I got it, because I was like, oh, yeah, cool stuff with different ports. But I will say, if I was kind of feeling that if the ATEM SDI Extreme ISO, if that just came out a little bit earlier, I would have probably rethought the 2ME Constellation. Mainly because in the studio here, I don't really need that much. Then I'm definitely pushing my limit with that the 2ME. Or no, I'm far from the limit with that 2ME. And I would have been just about pushing the limit with the Extreme ISO SDI ATEM thing. That's why I opted for this one. But you got one of these as well, didn't you, Jonas?
Yeah, so I got the 2ME HD and the ATEM Mini SDI Extreme ISO Plus or something. It's a really long name, but it's really interesting because like, what I would really like to see is an ATEM control surface in the body of the ATEM Mini Extremes.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that I really like. It's like not this huge control panel when like 30% of the buttons you'll just never use in a day-to-day show. Like all the setup I much rather do on my actual PC. So like I feel like cut that out and give me nice buttons on like an ATEM Mini Extreme type form factor as a control panel for the 2ME HD. That would be great. Also, like the outputs of the 2ME HD are really interesting because right now I only use it for like a 4-channel sync box, basically to resync all the camera angles. That's where it's really interesting. The ATEM Mini, I think if we look at the ATEM Mini and the ATEM SDI, you kind of have to think of like distance to camera. The ATEM Mini really is like a desk switcher. It's for like the church streamers, the streamers that want to go to YouTube with a couple of HDMI sources. But like for my church, we use an ATEM Mini Extreme, but it's always like a bit of a pain because convert it from HDMI out of the camera into SDI, back to SDI, from SDI back to HDMI, and then plug it into the ATEM. And there's like also a lot of latency that gets added there. So I'm really looking forward to removing a lot of conversion steps by just switching to the ATEM SDI. Also, the 4 outputs are really amazing. I think that's going to be a big feature for iMac and all that.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. I think that'll be huge. And I think it really helps to have this range of SDI options now, where before I really didn't want to recommend the Television Studio HD, any of the television studios for the last few years. I don't know how many years I could say, a few years, but let's say ever since the ATEM Mini came out, it's been really hard to recommend any of the SDI switchers except for the 8K Constellation. And then all of the new Constellations came out, and it was kind of like, well, it's hard to recommend those fully for anyone upgrading from an ATEM Mini. So it does feel like an upgrade if you have bigger venues, further distance from the cameras, like you said, and hopefully your cameras might have SDI outputs on them. Maybe you bought ones that have HDMI and SDI. That would be ideal for you. But you might have to buy a few converters in the meantime, if not. Monitors is the main thing that I've noticed people mentioning in the comments on the videos. It would have been nice to have, and we're never going to be happy. I mean, even this is a good one. Oh, sorry, not that one. 1 second. From let's see, Truth Seeker, great name. I just wish they'd make an ATEM NDI Extreme ISO. So we're never going to be happy. None of us. We're all going to be looking for different things. But one of the things on this ATEM SDI Pro ISO was it would have been nice to have one of the 2 outputs to be HDMI, because that way I can run it to my monitor right beside me. Who doesn't have a... Okay, that's a bit of a statement. Many of us have HDMI monitors, and SDI monitors are a bit of a reach.
You know what I think they want you to buy is they want you to buy one of their 12G video assists and just use that as your multi-view. I think that's the solution there.
Exactly. That was one of my thoughts after people asked for that. Was like, well, it's very convenient that they have monitors ready for you to be purchasing that have both options.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
And I feel like as soon as we join the kind of SDI world, that also like moves up in the professionalism a little bit. And like one of the things that I mentioned in their showcase is like this now opens up this huge area of like SDI tools that a lot of them cost more than the ATEM that you just bought, but also like there's a lot more opportunities there.
Yeah, there is, and I'm interested and also nervous, waiting to hear what the next ATEM is and when they'll announce it and how. Like this ATEM announcement was just a tweet that you shared with me. A tweet.
I think it was really chaotic.
Yeah, I don't get this one. It just went from nothing to, oh, by the way, we have a new product, and it was the same for the Constellation HDs as well. During NAB, it was an email to say, hey, we got new ones. It's been really strange to see the way that all of these product announcements have been happening over the last few months, and I can't see why.
And like with this one, I found it so funny. Like you had your in the loop video that everyone should check out to get an overview if you haven't heard about what the ATEM SDI actually is.
Thank you.
You got it out before they actually got to upload it to YouTube. Like it was so weird because we kept going to the announcement page on Blackmagic. Suddenly someone was like, someone uploaded a Vimeo video, which was like so strange because they never have done Vimeo. But like there was like a Vimeo video on there for a couple minutes, and then suddenly there was a YouTube video, but like no big fuss. There also was like some weird edit thing, so I felt like, I don't know, they maybe just wanted to push it out. This was probably one of the weirdest releases that I have done. And
they also had they went out of their way to set up like a weird little demo. It's like these people recording a podcast or something. I didn't understand it at all.
Yeah, and also like, come on guys. I think you might know like a manufacturer of SDI cameras that you could like borrow some cameras from. Do we really need to have like half of the multi-view being like a cooking show and the other half like being a interview about a band?
Yeah,
like
strange.
That was a bit weird.
Yeah, really strange. I'm confused. I would like them to just go back to scheduling a live stream a few days out talking about it live, and then we go from there.
Yeah.
People have a lot of. The chat has been wild. PTZ chat went well as well. People were thanking the chat for the thoughts on that, which is excellent. And then lots of opinions definitely on the here's one. Stanley says, what are your thoughts on the new SDI Extreme ISO paired with a smart video hub clean switch? So in my case, that would have been sort of an interesting. I can imagine myself going, okay, I'm going to start again. My original plan before the Constellation came out was to just switch to the video hub and then get a bunch of SDI to HDMI converters and then use my ATEM Mini Extreme as I've been using for ages. But I never liked the idea of having all those converters. I just didn't want to go down that path. If I didn't get the Constellation 2ME, what might have made a lot of sense now was to get the either SDI Pro ISO or the SDI Extreme ISO and then get a small video hub as well and go down that path. That probably would have worked well for my setup here. Yeah, that would have gotten me pretty far. But I'm not sure if I was within the return period, would I actually send back the 2ME and change and go down that path instead? And price-wise, I don't think it adds up very well.
Well, so if you look at it, I just looked at it, there's the Smart Video Hub Clean Switch 12 in, 12 out for 1,800.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I would much rather buy the 2ME Constellation. Because like if you think about it, the ATEM SDI Extreme ISO now has all of your outputs and inputs occupied. Because what you need is you have 8 inputs. So you have 8 outputs used. Then you also have 4 inputs, because you have the 4 SDI outs. So you would also want to route those. And suddenly you already have all of your in and outputs used. And like then you could only use it to like reassign them and move them around. Which I don't find myself doing that often. Like, I think at that point you would probably be better with like a patch panel. And then if you go up into the larger ones, it really doesn't add up to me to have an ATEM Mini Extreme. ATEM SDI Extreme ISO. They're really trying to make our lives harder to say all those names.
I've gotten used to the ATEM SDIs fast, but I cannot get used to the HyperDecks. All the new HyperDeck models. For some reason, it's just not clicking with me what they're all called.
Yeah. There's like a Studio one, and then there's the Studio Plus and a Pro.
Yeah.
And like...
But they're all HD, but not the other ones. Yeah, I'm lost.
That's right, yeah. And like... But that's like also so confusing. Like, you should see people that never heard about Blackmagic and love it, but never worked with it, arrive on set with their 4K, like Blackmagic 4K, and are like... I'm like, you know this is a 4K production. And they're like, yeah, it's great, I have my 4K camera with me. And you're like, the HDMI output is only HD. Then they come back with the 6K. And like, surely this one has it. No! Like, it's kind of weird, some of their design decisions that they do. But it also feels like they have been on this weird 6G path and like up to 8K. Like resolution. And I feel like they kind of pulled back from that a bit. Like, everything has a base level of full HD, 1080p now. All their 6G switches still have an upgrade due. So, yeah, I hope we see more 12G switches as an update for the 6G ones that they have right now.
Same. Yeah, same. I would like to see that too. Because I do know plenty of people who would love to go down that path, but it doesn't quite make sense based on what we have out there right now. So... maybe we'll see Constellation 4. Well, the problem really, to me, is like in the pricing and the features, it's really hard to figure where a 4K model or 2 would slot in. They've gotten themselves in a very tricky territory, I think, based on what's left in the prices and what's left in the features.
Yeah. It's a hard decision. Like, where do you add 4K? I honestly don't think we're gonna see an ATEM Mini Extreme 4K.
Yeah.
Just like, think about how hot your ATEM Mini Extreme already gets sometimes.
Yeah, this one's okay.
Yeah.
But
I don't think we'll see a 4K one.
Okay.
But
is that an official non-prediction?
Yeah, so as soon as we get one, I'm sure I'm getting this clip sent 1,000 times. But
I'll cut this clip out.
That's great. We'll make sure we do another live stream when they release the ATEM Mini Extreme 4K ISO or something.
Exactly.
And then we'll start with this whole preamble.
The only thing that makes me think that they will is one thing, and that is that the studio camera 4Ks have 4K capable HDMI ports on them. It's not currently activated, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, they have 4K capable ports ready to go. It's just not a feature.
Yeah.
So, maybe.
And someone in chat makes a great point, like Blackmagic is lagging in one specific area, video over IP. Like, they need to have an NDI nor SAMT 2110. They have a weird... It's not quite proprietary what they have. It's a SAMT protocol that they have. They also have these weird SDI to IP and IP to SDI converters. And then what they seem to really like is like take a standard and then make it weird. Like the whole streaming bridge thing where you now can like send a return audio and like return commands over an RTMP thing. And if anyone ever tried to stream to a streaming bridge with OBS, it doesn't work because they'll literally check for the name of the encoder and it has to be like Blackmagic H.264 encoder. So like if you rebuild OBS with that name, suddenly it works. And it's stuff like that that I find a bit infuriating. Like this industry lives from so many standards like HDMI and SDI and all that. And then like as soon as we go into the IP world, everyone decides to do their own kind of thing again. So what if we see an ATEM Ethernet Extreme ISO? Which has those huge studio things already built in, but then the other side is like those things are huge.
They are huge.
Like that must be like a 4H. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, that would be. I don't think you would see the extreme versions of that, but maybe like the 2 and 4ME constellation size Ethernet.
Yeah.
Well, what are they going to call that? It's going to be. They must have a plan. I'm hoping they have a plan.
I mean, one person there probably has a plan.
Someone, yeah.
That's grand.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
It often feels like Grant says what you're gonna do, and then that's what they're gonna do, and then you might have talked to someone that changed his mind a little bit, and then there's a change in pace.
Yeah. That's a good of a guess as any of us could give, I think. Let's see what else people saying. Doug says, I think Blackmagic introduced the constellations before the ATEM SDIs on purpose to get sales on the more expensive models. Makes sense. Yeah, I think everyone who was waiting for an SDI switcher and they didn't want to spring for a Constellation 8K, their option for the last few months has been the 1, 2, and 4ME HD versions. And interestingly, obviously the 4MEs, none of those have shipped yet. The 4ME Constellation HDs. So maybe they'll try and ship those before they push out another Constellation 4K, 4ME, something. But that makes sense that they would try to push that out there. Grant has a plan.
What would be interesting, what if they pull a similar thing like they did for the Constellation 8K, where they say it's a 4ME HD switcher, but you can change it to 4K, and then it's a 1ME switcher.
Yeah?
And it uses quad-link SDI.
That would suck, though. Wouldn't quad-link SDI... Isn't that just annoying?
I mean, it's quite annoying, but it kind of sounds like Blackmagic also, like to get around of some 12G SDI chip shortages.
Could be a good way to ship a few new things out there.
Yeah.
Randy says, if the Constellation HD had included ISO recording, it would have been great. That's one of the big differences between those. The mini form factor and the rack stuff is they're just not touching. They don't want to stop you from buying all their other recording and streaming products. But what I'm really interested about this little ATEM SDI Pro ISO that I have here is I can run 4 of the outputs from my Constellation into this, and without much effort at all, can record 4 inputs plus the program output from this. And for all of my YouTube videos, for all that kind of stuff that I'm doing, 4 channels of video at a time during during a shoot. So the main camera, overhead, maybe like the computer screen, and I can't even think of a fourth one right now. Maybe another computer screen at the same time to record like even a long video is perfect for me. Do you think that's...
And I think that's kind of crazy. Like the ATEM SDI Extreme ISO is like a 9-channel H.264 recorder, which is kind of amazing. That's a really interesting use case, but then on the other side, would you really, like, if you have a show that's large enough that you need 8 ISO recorders, do you really trust an ATEM Mini SDI Extreme ISO for that? And then you start to think again, yeah.
That's one of my considerations that I was just having. Like, well, I'm going to record these 5 channels of video, but I'm also going to record on another device at the same time, because you shoot like a 30-minute video, and you get done and you realize that it didn't record, or it recorded at nothing quality. That really, it does bother me to know that you press record and then you hope for the best. It's never a position you should be in.
Yeah, and I think they should just be more open about the ability to look at the growing files over FTP. Like, one of the things that I've been doing is like look at the growing file on the actual drive FTP into the ATEM Minis and make sure that you see audio meters bouncing and all that.
Yeah.
But like the 0 bitrate recording also comes back, I think, to like a common discussion that we are having with the ATEMs. It's like, please open up the software control side. Like, theirs is quite good, but it would be so much better if there's like a more open protocol for apps to hook into. And I saw that a couple times mentioned in chat that it would be very, very cool if like you wouldn't need to hop between all these apps. And like, I know we two constantly have conversations about like, what should we do? Like, I think we both at one point started working on like a control app for the ATEM and like stopped again and started again. And like my horror story was with the 2ME HD, because Companion didn't update and the ATEM software. So what I ended up needing to do to cut on my 2ME for a gig, because I thought it's a great idea to just try it on a like low profile gig, I used the Video Hub routing protocol on my Stream Deck. I routed everything into preview, and then I used, you can use your keyboard and just hit the spacebar in ATEM software control to do a cut. So I ended up like doing routing changes to choose preview and then do a cut. Problem with, it was a little problematic, but I made it work.
You got messy, but you made it work. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, time has disappeared fast on us, but what I am quite keen on doing, Jonas, and I'm going to ask you this now while people are watching, so you don't get an option, but I want to get you to help me out on the live stream more often, if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing how fast time goes whenever you're chit-chatting with someone who is as frustrated and also delighted with the same equipment as you are, and a group of people watching along who feel the same frustrations and delight. So we should do this more often if you're up for it.
You know what? I'm totally up for that. The only thing, and I kept this for the past, is a minute into our live stream, the preview image just stopped.
No way.
So I had no idea what you're doing the whole time, and I know I had some sync issues from chat, so I was listening and watching to our YouTube stream a bunch of the time. So yeah, I think we'll do it again, but then I really want some preview.
That is so funny. I had no idea. I wish you had said that to me. I would have tried to fix it.
We made it work.
I'm looking at it on vMix now, and it is paused in that exact frame.
Yeah, it's great.
Next time every time we'll get better. This time it went pretty well, better than I thought it would go. So, and I didn't know about that, obviously. So next time we'll make it slightly better, and you know what's happening. But you didn't, I didn't catch you at any terrible moments, so we got there in the end. And I'm afraid to press anything now because I don't want to break it.
We made it work.
We did. But cool. Where should people find you if they want to ask you more about all this fun stuff that you care about?
I tend to hang around a lot on your Discord server. I also have my own Discord server for all the BioType products. There's a couple of things in the pipeline. A lot of people are waiting for those, and I think there's some huge steps that have been made, and John gets to see them in our meetings where I'm excited and show him like 3 lines of code that have been 30 lines of code before, and I think we're getting there. So yeah, probably your Discord, my Discord, or yeah, that's basically it.
So you can definitely do that. And in fact, if you go into the Discord and you check out the announcements channel, you will hear about a cool, super secret project that you and I and Lucas, who's in the chat as well, have been working on for a few months now.
Yeah.
Get some alpha testing on with that. I'm not going to talk about that in the live stream today, but I'm sure we'll talk about it plenty in the future. But if you want to get your hands on that and test it out for us, then that'll be much appreciated. Thanks to you, Jonas, for joining me on the stream today. I think I can just wrap things up here with thanks to all of you for watching along. And a big thanks, of course, to all of the channel members who always support the channel. Jeremy, Marlon, Patrick, Cloud Bedrock as well. And we also have Lightboard as well. I missed that on the list there, but we'll get you in next time. Big thanks to all you for watching. I'm going to see how many buttons I need to press before this stream wraps up. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next live stream. Until then, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.